Hello everybody, my name is MrScaryMuffin and welcome back to another Thoughts, Talk, and TF2. Today's topic is brought to you by the best Ginger 9, who had asked me my thoughts on YouTubers basically saying drugs are cool, everybody should do drugs, when knowing that their audience is a bunch of little kids who can be easily influenced and essentially saying they're not very good role models. And I have to agree that they're probably not the best role model. You don't want to be basing your life on that kind of attitude. But in terms of drug culture or drug usage, I'm fairly open minded about a lot of things. And you guys know my mantra, it is everything in moderation. And aside from a few hard drugs such as meth and stuff like that, I don't really see too much harm in recreational use a lot of times. Of course, in our current culture, we've got alcohol, we've got tobacco, we have marijuana. Those things are fairly popular. In fact, 420 or April 20th was just this week, so it's actually quite a good timing on that. And I live in British Columbia, which has probably the best weed around. Not that I would know because I've never smoked weed, but Zebra would confirm it is probably the best in the world. Apparently the string or variant of it called BC Gold, it is particularly good. I personally have no basis of comparison. I'll let you guys know my own philosophy or my own policy on drugs, and this is completely something I do for me. And I'll explain myself a little bit later. I don't expect anybody else to follow me. If people enjoy it, if they like alcohol, whatever, all to you. It is your own stuff. As long as nobody else is getting hurt, I really don't see too much problem with it. Of course, when you look at like the holistic stuff, it's like, oh, but you're supporting the drug war and there's gangs and blah 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 and that kind of stuff. Yeah, there's that kind of stuff, and it gets to be a more gray line. I agree with that as well. Me personally, since I was 11, I've decided not to partake in any drugs whatsoever. And this came about due to probably some kind of misscience that I've heard about tolerance and things like that. But essentially, there are, in my mind, three kinds of drugs. We have casual drugs or recreational drugs, such as alcohol, weed, ecstasy, ketamine, that kind of stuff. We have hard drugs like meth. I would kind of put cocaine under hard drugs, although cocaine is kind of between the line of recreational and hard drugs, but cocaine can cause a lot of issues. Heroin definitely is going to be a hard drug kind of stuff. These are the ones that you basically want to avoid. I think there was an ad that came around on TV a while ago that was basically saying not meth, not even once, and it's just because of how addicting it is and how overpowering it is to your senses kind of stuff. The third kind of drug is what we call good drugs, quote-unquote good drugs, and these are your medicinal drugs, things like aspirin, things like cough syrup, things like your asthma medicine, things that help with AIDS, keep your diabetes in check, although insulin is more like just a thing. But yeah, these are good drugs, and when I was 11 and decided I wouldn't take any drugs, I was actually thinking more about good drugs, period, because I heard that you can develop tolerance about these kinds of things. And essentially I decided, well, if I have a headache, I'm not going to take painkillers. And when I had braces for 7 years. I've had braces for a really long time. My teeth were really messed up. Even though the teeth pulling and moving, the soreness and the pain, I still decided not to take any aspirins or painkillers for that, even though they recommended things like Tylenol 3, ibuprofen. It's just like super strong painkillers. I still decided, I'll just tough it out. It's fine. I'll deal with it. And that attitude, went towards things like weed when my friends started smoking, went towards alcohol when my friends started drinking. And I personally never really liked alcohol. I've tried it a few times, and I'm just like, yeah, no, I don't really like the taste. I especially don't like the price tag that comes with stuff like that. I don't even like buying pop anymore. But I'm way too cheap to buy alcohol. I will occasionally accept free alcohol, but I really don't enjoy it, so I feel like other people are wasting their money on me, and so I would be like, no, thank you, you can have it. Like, when I went to a hotel after I got engaged with Jasmine, I booked a hotel and kind of like a getaway up in Whistler, a couple hours away. My friend helped arrange the booking, and they set up to have a bottle of champagne for us on ice. And I was like, oh, that's nice. I guess we should drink it. And I took like a sip of it, and I'm like, No, thank you. It's probably an acquired taste, like Earl Grey tea or something like that, but personally, I don't know. I wouldn't bother the time to get used to it. And I never really need social lubricant or any kind of stuff like that. Those of you guys who have hung out with me know that I talk very freely. I converse with people very well. I have a good time regardless of whatever. And what I really don't like about drugs is not being in control of your own body. Having your mind slightly altered, having your motor skills not reacting as quick as you think they should. Those kind of things I actually don't like very much, and I find kind of scary personally. It's kind of weird to think of Donald Trump as anybody who take advice from, but he also does not drink, period, because he says when you see somebody drunk, you lose a lot of respect for them. And I kind of agree with that. You know, people are still doing their own stuff, but when you see them doing little silly things, you kind of like, well, this person's not really in control of themselves, and you don't want to rely too much on that person anymore, at least at that moment, and that kind of feeling can carry over into future things. But as far as other people consuming drugs or using drugs, kind of stuff like that around me, I've never really tried to push my feelings to other people. I never try to push my policy on other people, and mainly because I don't expect them to try to force me to go like, oh yeah, you should drink. Like, well, no, I'm not going to drink, right? I don't want people to try to force me to drink, try to force me to take weed or whatever, right? Similarly, I don't want to force other people to stop, especially not in a social setting where it's like, you know, you're not, don't bother with politics and that kind of stuff, right? Like, everybody's there to have a good time. You know, if somebody is dangerously abusing a drug, then arrange an intervention for them, right? Everybody go like, oh man, this guy is going a little bit far and beyond what is kind of like acceptable socially. Maybe they're drinking by themselves, drinking the press, whatever kind of thing. You're like, hey, you know, do you need some help? We'll be there to help you, kind of help you out. But I think the way I treat my own personal policy on drugs is the way I mentioned on how people should give advice in a previous episode. Basically, you give advice in a way where you really don't care if somebody takes your advice, kind of thing. And for me, it's like I will live my way, live my life the way I want to, and I will just use that as my way of life, as my advice, as an exemplary example for people. And if people want to be like that, that's cool. If people don't want to be the same way as me, whatever. And I tell you, it's kind of interesting when you meet some other people who are also, you know, prefer not to take any kind of drugs, people who don't drink, kind of stuff, and you kind of form a nice connection with them as well. I don't know. That's one of my things that I enjoy, is just being able to chat with people. And yeah, I don't know. I tend to leave a lot of parties when people start to get really drunk, just because it's not. It just becomes kind of silly and kind of awkward, in my opinion. I still can chat with people, but they're way more concerned with drinking and actually just consuming and stuff like that. And so I was just kind of like, yeah, well, I hung out for a couple hours now, and we had some good conversations. I'll probably extract myself from the situation now. Everybody have a good time, and I'll head home. And as far as kids watching other people and hearing all this kind of stuff, I personally feel like kids are smart. If you tell them drugs are cool, and you tell them, here are the possible side effects of drugs. I mean, kids these days, they have the internet, they can search things, they can learn themselves, and I think a lot of them will be experimenting with drugs, and I think that's something that's necessary. People need to know kind of like the limits. If somebody was like allergic to peanuts, a lot of kids, when they have allergies, they do try to see how far they can push the line with their own allergies, kind of stuff. And it happens. These are things that some the kids want to do. They just want to test their own limits of their own body, kind of stuff. And it's an understandable thing. It's something that you are curious about. And as long as it's not something that is super harmful, such as meth, like heroin, that kind of stuff, then I think it should be okay, as long as nobody else is really getting hurt from it. That said, I mean, I'm saying that kids are smart. They can decide for themselves. It is their own lives to choose from. So yeah, that's one of my thoughts. Let me know if you guys have any comments in the comment section below, and we'll be back again next week with another topic. Bye!